The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Dr. Rab, what you got? Jeez, dude. That almost sounds...
We're angry dogs today.
Yeah,
angry
that
dogs.
sounds like someone hit your mailbox or something there at Rossbridge Animal Hospital.
Somebody did hit my mailbox.
What? I mean, what's up with that, dude?
I don't know. I guess people were... I think probably what it was is they were so excited to get Tony Kurre Radio Network turned on their phone, and they quit paying attention just for a second. They were like, "Whoa, I gotta get on here so I can listen to Darkside of the Pooch." That's what I'm going with, so I'm gonna forgive them. But we'll never know because they didn't stop.
Do people realize that they have just taken away a leak in place for every animal you have that goes to Rossbridge Animal Hospital? There's nowhere to take a leak if you're a pooch now.
Well, or me. I like to pee on the mailbox too.
I'll bet you do it early in the morning. I'm sure the Rossbridge community loves that about you. Now when you pee, do you squat or do you hike one leg like a regular dog does?
I do. One leg. It's the left leg.
I got you.
That's the left. I do it because I put my weight on my right leg. I got kicked by a horse in my left leg, so I can't really balance very well.
I got you. This is Darkside the Pooch. He's Dr. Rab Stewart of the Rossbridge Animal Hospital. I love talking with you. Darkside the Pooch. It airs every Monday at noon and 8. 208-0301. 208-0301. Darkside the Pooch at Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, and of course, Rossbridge Animal Hospitals out there in the beautiful Rossbridge area. So, perfect Mutt Mail. Tom in Franklin, Tennessee. This is perfect. Says he has two dogs. He takes them for walks every single day. They always sniff the same post, and one dog's much bigger than the other, and one always pees on the face of the other dog. How can I get my dogs to stop peeing on each other?
Oh my gosh! So one of them puts his face. Yeah, you might have to read this again. One of them puts his face in the way, or the dog aims for the other.
They're both trying. They're both trying to establish themselves. And one dog, while he's sniffing the post, the other dog starts peeing on it, and he inadvertently pees on the other dog's head. He goes, but he does it almost every single time they go for a walk.
I mean, I guess he's gonna have to get a longer leash. And he's got to get a longer leash so that he can hold the one back and then give a little bit of rein there and let the one pee first, so the other one doesn't get his head peed on.
It's a golden retriever, golden shower is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. All right, we'll get into some more Mutt Mail here. Go to TonyKurreRadio.net, TonyKurreRadio.net, become a bonehead, and leave your questions. We got a plethora of emails, including one that is a question that I've never read before, and this actually comes from a girl named Stephanie in Louisville, Kentucky, so I'll read that in just a few minutes. I do have a little issue with my animals. Now, you know I've got snakes, and I've had goats, and I've had rabbits. I've had it all, but I have two dogs. They're my love and joy, and I absolutely love them. So I have Rainer, which is a Australian Shepherd, and he likes his exercise. The more I walk him, the more he wants to walk, and so I try to walk him at least once a day, and that usually suffices. He's got a nice big backyard he can go, but he's becoming an indoor animal. And so I had to leave the other day to go do some meetings, and because I was going to be gone for an extended period of time, I called my neighbor, Christy, and I said, would you please go over there around 3 o'clock, feed my two dogs, leave it down for about a half an hour, let them out, and then you're good to go. When I got home that evening at 9 o'clock, Rainer was chewing one of my brand new gym shoes on one of my chairs. I don't mind him being on the chairs, but he has never been a shoe chewer, and I about lost it because I was like, oh, hell no, we're not going back there. And I know he's angry with me, and I know it's because I wasn't around all day, but I did have someone come over and take care of him. What gives? What happens there? Do I have a reason to have a red flag or be worried about this?
If it repeats itself, then yeah. That's it's separation anxiety. You know, he just got nervous. He loves you and he doesn't want you to be gone. So you can either, if it happens again, then we can talk about medication for separation anxiety. Separation anxiety can be very harmful for the pet, and it can obviously be harmful for your house or your belongings. Some dogs they get so nuts and so afraid that they'll tear stuff up until they hurt themselves. So they'll break out of kennels and cut their mouth all up or cut their feet all up. I've seen dogs chew through drywall.
Wow.
And so they've got just, they've got trauma all in their mouth. So, this is kind of, for you, it's more of an inconvenience and an expense, but sometimes it can be very harmful to the dog. So if it continues, we need to talk about some medications. Or you could, if you want to try a kennel first, if it's mild, all you have to do is just keep them away from the stuff. But if it's severe enough, like I said, they'll try to break out of the kennel and they'll hurt themselves in the process.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, as a pet owner, you realize the more you give your dog, the more it's going to expect. And again, every afternoon around 3:30, my dogs are going crazy because they think I'm going to take them for a walk, and sometimes I'm just too pooped to party. But most of the times I will try to take them out, and it doesn't have to be an hour walk. It could be a half an hour walk, and they're into it. But you talk about separation anxiety. 1 in 67 people used to work remotely. Now it's 1 in 7. You get a lot of people going back to work. I'll bet you're probably prescribing a lot of that medication these days, aren't you?
Yeah, we get calls about it a lot. And it's so prevalent that I think people knew it was going to happen. It's just something that I think people are aware of. And so we had calls once things kind of started loosening back up. They called and asked for advice, or they called and wanted to try some medication preemptively, because a lot of these people got dogs and then they were around them for a year and a half, almost consistently, almost constantly. And so now some of them are going back to work. And so they need something to help, either just advice or in severe cases, medication.
Dr. Rab Stewart of the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, Darkside, the Pooch. It airs exclusively on Tony Curry Radio and the Tony Curry Radio app. Download the app now if you're listening on your PC. And, of course, it's brought to you by Ed's Pet World, 47 years in the business right there in Homewood, 879-1331. They specialize in exotic pets. They've got it all from birds, parakeets, Amazon parrots. They even talk, rabbits, chinchillas, ferrets, more. They got bearded dragons, chameleons, turtles, geckos, red-tailed boas. I've got a ball boa upstairs. They've got it all. And, of course, they'll create the best relationship with those exotic pets. They also have an amazing collection of vintage and modern toys. Seth, our good friend, goes all over the country to bring those back. Figures, pops, Star Wars stuff, various items, especially watches, collectibles, and, of course, he buys, sells, and trades. So if you find something in the attic, take it down to Ed's Pet World in Homewood. They'd be more than happy to check you out. Speaking of ferrets here in Darkside, the Pooch, sad story out of Minnesota. A man was arrested after killing his roommate's 4 emotional support ferrets last week because they smelled like, and I won't say what it is, Levi Amberg, 27, was accused of fatally shooting the animals with a BB gun and dumping their remains in an alley outside his Duluth apartment. He's been arrested. He said, "Dude, I killed the ferrets. Give me a break." Police said, "You can't do it," and he was arrested for it. First of all, let's start with the beginning of that story. A ferret as an emotional support animal. Have you heard that? And we think we talked about this a little bit last week on Darkside the Pooch. Any animal can be a support animal, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I've never specifically heard of a ferret being a support animal, but it doesn't mean it can't be. I think that we'll hear about all kind of pets, that end up being support animals. So, it's common, and we'll hear a lot of other stories about this and other species. And
I think you could make an argument that any animal is a support animal in some context, but if you want to use that animal in public or maybe on an airline, you obviously have to have some type of documentation along with that, correct?
Oh yeah. You'd have to have something. It's almost like it's prescribed, almost like a medication, but I think most people, it's like you said, I think most people have a pet because it does provide some emotional support. It gives something, it's companionship, it gives people something to love. But, some people, it's not just, it's not just an everyday friend. It's something that they need to be normal.
Yeah, my Havanese last week rolled in dog poop out in the backyard, and so I had to give it a bath, and I got this shampoo. I don't know what it is, but he smells wonderful. Usually animals that you've just given a bath to, primarily dogs, they don't always smell really good right after you give them a bath. Is there a good shampoo to make your dog smell like you want them to smell? And second of all, give me some breeds, since we're talking about this guy didn't like the smell of ferrets. Are there certain breeds of animals that just smell worse than others? I always think of beagles. Hounds always have somewhat of a smell to them, and it's not an animal you always want to be giving a bath to, but how do you deal with that?
Well, the ferrets are supposed to smell.
Yeah.
They have these scent glands, and they do. I mean, they can smell pretty nasty.
And that's the defensive purposes.
Yeah, I mean, but also it's just kind of it's part of, I mean, it's like their body odor. I mean, it's not. It can act as a defense mechanism, but it's just kind of who and what they are. And most, most ferrets are going to smell that way. But I think that the smell that we talk about with dogs, usually there's a medical reason for it. They've got really bad gingivitis, or they've got dental disease, they got terrible breath, or they've got an ear infection, or they've got a skin infection. A lot of times it's a fungal infection, maybe on their feet, or if they have skin folds, like bulldogs do, French bulldogs and English bulldogs, pugs. They've got these skin folds that get infected because they never really get to air out, so they smell just funky, like sour. So those are all. A lot of times it's not so much in dogs a normal thing. It's a disease process with the skin or ears or mouth. But dogs do have glands that are kind of underneath their tail and inside around their rectum, and they can express those glands. And a lot of people say it smells really fishy. People would call and say, "Hey, my dog did something that smells fishy," not like questionable, but fishy as in like really fishy. And so that can be a defense mechanism for dogs, or they'll express those if they're anxious or scared or whatever.
I heard my dog fart the other night, and it's the first time I've heard my dog actually pass gas. I know animals, and I know we all pass gas, but is that normal, and is that a diet thing?
It's normal, and it can be a diet thing. If it's happening a lot, or if it's just really foul, then yeah, it can be a diet thing. But I think dogs will sometimes surprise themselves, which is really funny. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
Yes.
But they'll do that, and they'll like whip around like, what the hell? What?
Just like we do. That wasn't me. Where'd that come from?
Exactly.
They start looking around the room. Who was that? It was one of the funniest things I ever heard.
Yeah, I usually I point at people. I wish a dog would do that. Like, instead of like turning around and looking at themselves, they like raise their paw up and like point at my kid.
Oh, I love that. That's hilarious. Darkside the Pooch here with Dr. Rab Stewart from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital at Rossbridge Vet. You can also go to Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook. Give them a call. They're the best. 205-208-0301. We've given birth to puppies and kittens and chickens and all kinds of things, and Dr. Rab takes care of all those. Not the chickens, but the dogs and the cats. He does a wonderful work. All right, we got some Mutt Mail here. Go to TonyCurryRadio.net, TonyCurryRadio.net. Become a bonehead and leave your questions, and we'll get into them here. Chuck in Oregon says he loves to smoke his wacky tobacco. He's got 3 dogs, 3 pit bulls, and a cat. And his wife is concerned that perhaps his animals are getting secondary smoke. He said sometimes they act a little quiet, a little tired when he gets off work and smokes out in the barn. The dogs are with him. Is there any side effects, and can secondary smoke harm dogs and cats? We'll go cigarette smoke as well.
Yeah, for sure. Cigarette smoke can it can lead to respiratory problems in dogs and cats, and we'll sometimes see that if an owner has been smoking inside for a long period of time. The X-rays will show what would be consistent with bronchitis and things like that. To my knowledge, I've never seen like a lung cancer that we could definitively say was because of secondhand smoke, so I don't know if it could go to that extreme, but there's definitely papers and journals written on pets that have gotten secondary lung disease from being around chronic smokers. Well, I guess chronic, I was talking about tobacco, but I guess that can we can bleed over into the other one now. So with marijuana, the main thing that we see when there's a problem is edibles, because dogs will get into that stuff. I've never seen a dog with any problems because of secondary marijuana smoke. Now, if you were to blow it in the dog's face repeatedly, then maybe. but I've never had anybody do that I know of. And I don't know if there has been enough time, because a lot of times with pets and studies, if the pet is not the model for the study, meaning that it's not the subject, like, hey, we're doing this new drug or this new vaccine or whatever, we're going to test it on animals first. A lot of times this other stuff happens much later because it's not tested on animals. So as far as having any secondhand problems from marijuana smoke just passively, I don't know of anything.
Is there any drawback? And I'm not saying I would ever do this because the animal really has no say in it, but I have read stories where guys have put their cats in cardboard boxes and made them into bongs to get their cats stoned. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but evidently they think it's funny. But is there any drawback or anything that's could be derogatory towards doing that occasionally?
Yeah. Yeah, I would not do that, because they get overstimulated actually. Pets, they don't, it affects them differently. So it can actually be a stimulus for pets, and it can cause neurologic and cardiovascular problems. So don't do that if you're listening out there. Don't do it.
All right. He's Dr. Rab Stewart from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, Darkside, the Pooch. It airs every Monday at noon and 8. And, of course, you can go to TonyCurryRadio.net. That's Curry with a K, TonyCurryRadio.net, and leave your questions. We got a couple more Mutt Mail questions. First, I wanted to bring up some amazing news, and it happened right here in our state with the University of Alabama. They did a transplant of, I guess, pig kidneys in a brain dead individual to find out if they could actually use we've heard about pig hearts, but pig kidneys, and it actually took. It was healthy. It was pink. And so I'll throw the question out to you. Do you do any type of organ transplants in animals, or can you?
You can. I mean, we don't. That goes beyond the scope of what, we would do. But you can do transplants. They were trying to do kidney transplants in Auburn probably a decade ago. And so they were working on that there at the right before I got into, well, I guess, yeah, or it was maybe 10 or 12 years ago, right around the time that I was there. They were trying to do that. You can do valve replacements and hearts. So yeah, I mean, you can do transplants, but it's definitely not something that you would have from like a general practitioner. Yeah, you'd have to go to a school.
Does it have to be breed to breed? Can you use the heart maybe of a golden retriever and put it in a Havanese? Or, I mean, obviously the size obviously would have to play into that. And what type of blood types do animals have? Do they have different types of blood types?
Oh, I don't know if you could do a heart transplant. I've never known of that happening. You can look, the actual valves, you can replace those in the heart, but I don't know that you could do a full heart replacement. But yes, they do have different types of blood. And blood typing in dogs is not as important as it is in cats. Blood typing in cats is something that is a bigger deal, because they're more likely to reject a blood type if it's not theirs. But the other interesting thing about cats is sometimes you can get away, like if you're in an emergency situation and it's either this cat needs blood or it's going to die, sometimes you don't have time to test its blood type. You just have to give it blood. So a lot of times if you can get by with one transfusion, they'll be okay. But after that, the body, the immune system develops antibodies. So if you were to try to do another transfusion of a blood type that was not the cat's, then you could get into some anaphylactic problems where the body, has an immune response, and it could potentially be catastrophic. So that's why blood typing in cats is more important than dogs, but it's important in dogs too.
Gotcha. Let's get into some more Mutt Mail here. Tina in Mobile says that she's got a brand new Pekingese. It's about 2 years old, and it won't stop eating her panties. She's like, no matter where she leaves her panties, they're in the dirty laundry, they're on the floor, wherever they are, the dog just will not stop eating her panties. What's going on with that, and how can she stop?
I mean, it's just a common thing that they eat, underwear and socks. And I mean, it's been a while since I've pulled out a pair of underwear from a dog, in surgery, because they swallow that stuff. Sometimes it gets obstructed and you have to remove it surgically. It's been a while since I've pulled out a pair, but I've pulled out several, over the years.
Why is that? I mean, I know that animals will eat their own poop. They'll eat all kinds of different things, but why do some dogs just eat regular food and then other dogs will just eat bark and all kinds of weird things?
I think when it comes to clothing, I think it's a scent. And I know that is maybe not, it's not super like fun to talk about, but I think that when it comes to clothing, if there's a scent from the owner on it, they're interested in it. And anything that interests dogs, whether it's clothing or plant material or anything, if it's interesting to them, the first thing they're going to do is put it in their mouth, because that's how they explore things. It doesn't sound correct, but a dog's mouth is also its hands. We put things in our hands to feel the texture of things. Dogs put it in their mouth. So a lot of times if it goes in their mouth, it's easier to swallow it than it is to spit it out. So down it goes. Wow.
That's kind of weird. And I know that you've talked about some obstructions there to Ross Bridget. My producer is laughing. He can't stop laughing. And I've also heard about perhaps animals taking up prophylactics and other different types of things that we leave on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That amazing story you had. You've told it like 14 times. You're going to have to tell it again someday. All right, more Mutt Mail here. Here's a weird one, and we can go in about a million different directions on this one. This is from Stephanie in Louisville, Kentucky. She said she recently broke up with her boyfriend, and so she decided to go ahead and get a Mastiff as something not only to keep her company, but also protect her in her home. And she said her boyfriend was kind of a hairy type of guy, and that they used to cuddle a lot in bed. And now she's finding herself allowing her Mastiff to sleep in bed with her, and that she actually tries to spoon the dog because she's used to spooning somebody. But she actually makes the bed for the dog, and it actually sleeps on the pillow like a human being. She wants to know if she's losing her mind, if she's okay, and is that normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great that the dog can be there, for her. And it's kind of what we started the show with, the support animal. So I would have no problem doing that. Now, the only thing that I would think about is because, in our line of work, we hear it all. We're the dog's doctor, and sometimes we're the dog's therapist, and sometimes, I mean, we're the person's therapist.
Yes.
Now, we don't make any recommendations when it comes to that, because that's not our job. That's Dr. Josh's job. But the only thing that I would caution her with is sometimes we get the other side of the story. Like, hey, I got this dog 10 years ago, and it was my first dog, and it was my best friend, and it helped me through all these hard times. And now I'm getting married, and this dog hates the person that I'm marrying. Because the person wants to sit next to me on the couch or sleeping in the same bed, and the dog is being aggressive towards my mate. So I would just tell her to be cautious, because if a bond like that develops, and then down the road, she meets somebody, and then they move forward, the dog might have some big problems with the new person.
Wow. And see, I'd never thought of that, because I realize that animals are part of our families and they're family members, but I would never not marry a woman, or I would not think it would turn into a major argument because of my dog. But I could certainly see that. So you mentioned sometimes you're a people therapist. I want to go deeper, Dr. Rab. What's the biggest disagreement you've seen between a husband and a wife in your office?
In my office, I mean, we don't see anything major. I mean, the thing that we see, not commonly, but the thing we probably see the most is when you're collecting the history, like you're in the room and for example, there's a dog that has had diarrhea, and one spouse will say, the dog's been having diarrhea for like a week and a half, and every time it poops, it has diarrhea. And the other person will say, no, I mean, this only happened like twice. And then every other time, and they'll go back and forth for like a few times, and I'm just standing there thinking, all right, can we just get our story straight so we can move on, please?
Well, obviously, you know which one's cleaning it up then.
Yeah. Or sometimes you'll have one that, like, I think as people, we don't want there to be anything wrong.
Yeah.
We just don't. Like, we don't want to be sick. We don't want our relatives to be sick. We don't want our friends to be sick. We don't want our pets to be sick. And so sometimes we just kind of, I think, maybe invent a reason for everything to be okay. So you have one person that says, it's really not that bad. I think they're fine.
Yeah.
And the other person says, no, you're wrong.
Do you ever have any issues when it comes down to cost? You obviously have wonderful prices there, and you're the best, so you're well worth whatever the price is. But do you ever have a situation where you have a man and a woman disagree on what they're willing to spend to save an animal?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I welcome anybody when they say, hey, can you tell me how much it costs? Yeah. I actually prefer that. But the way that we operate is, we tell you what should be done. And then we tell you, here are your options on how you can get it done. And then we kind of leave the price out of it unless they say, hey, can you give me an estimate?
Yeah.
Because I've been burned in the past. Because if you lead with that, hey, do you need me to get you an estimate? I find that more people are insulted over that than they are if we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
If people say, hey, how much is it going to cost? I welcome that. Yeah, absolutely. Here's your treatment plan. Here's how much it's going to cost. But yeah, a lot of times if I'm on the phone with one person or we have one person in the room and not the other person, then they'll say, hey, I need to call my spouse.
Yeah.
Or, hey, let's hang up and then I'll call my spouse. But usually, not all the time, but usually you have one member of the relationship that it doesn't matter what it costs or what the odds are. They're going for it.
Yeah, and what I love about you, yeah, go ahead. No, go continue.
Yeah, and then you have the other one that's more like budget minded. But yeah. I just try to, because I don't want to get involved with that because I know that it's awkward for them. So I'll just say, look, here's what we can do. And if they say, well, can we talk about it? I say, absolutely. And we leave the room. Yeah. Because we say, look, okay, we're going to step out. When you're done, open the door. And we'll know we can come back in and talk, because the last thing we want to do is alienate somebody. And I tell people this all the time. We are not here to judge you. If the decision is we cannot afford to do this surgery, what's our next best option? We're here to help in any way we can. So there's no judgment passed.
Yeah. What I love about you too is I know you're an animal lover. You're obviously a veterinarian and you're the best of the best. But there have been several times, including having to put animals down, where I'll say, if this was your dog, what would you do? And you've answered me honestly. And in a lot of cases, I could certainly see a veterinarian saying, oh, well, we should do everything we possibly can to save this pet, despite your financial situation and blah, 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 blah. And you're real about it. And I love that about you. And that's what makes you so good. So great stuff. Tell people how they can get in touch with you and where they can find you.
Yeah, you can obviously find us at Ross Bridge. You can call us at 208-0301. You can find us on Facebook, Ross Bridge Animal Hospital. You can email us at rossbridgeanimalhospital@gmail.com.
And again, this wonderful show, Darkside the Pooch, brought to you by Ed's Pet World, 47-year family-owned business in Birmingham, right down there in beautiful Homewood, in service since 1974. They'll provide your new special pet all the information, support you need to have the best relationship with them. They even bring pets to classrooms. They can do all kinds of wonderful fairs and carnivals and stuff with all their animals. They have snakes, they have ball pythons, birds and parakeets, bearded dragons. They've got everything, any type of exotic pets. They've had geckos down there, Amazon parrots, rabbits, chinchillas, ferrets, and more. They also have an incredible selection of unopened toys, vintage and modern toys, everything from Star Wars to pops to figures, various items, specialty watches, collectibles. They buy, sell, and trade. They do it all at Ed's Pet World, our brand new sponsor of Darkside of the Pooch. You can give them a call at 205-879-1331. Until next week, wag your tail, get belly rubs, my friend. I love you, and I'll see you next week.
Love you, buddy. Talk to you later.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.